of security about next year, that they at least know that we came together and made sure that this payroll tax cut was in place. It's vital for the people of Pennsylvania, and I think it's essential for economic growth across the country. We need to come together and get this done. Mr. President, I would yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we seem to be heading to an agreement today. At this point, the House appears to be ready to vote on the conference report on the appropriations bills for the rest of the fiscal year, which would be till the end of September of next year. I think this is a good thing. We came to an agreement in August called the Budget Control Act. It was a 10-year commitment to lower spending, lower our deficits, and it requires a cap in each of the next 10 years that would be a down payment on our debt. Lower the deficits and lower the debt. The omnibus appropriations bill, obviously because it has so many different agencies in it, rather than each separate agency bill going forward as we have done normally in the past in the Senate, because it has so many, there are people who are going to disagree with parts of it. There's no getting around that. The military construction, of which I am on the subcommittee and have chaired it in the past, is part of this bill. So are many of the other bills that are very important for the functioning of our government. However, what the appropriations bill has done, in the main, is to stick with the agreement that we all made. In August, there was a lot of negotiation on how we deal with the debt. You know, Mr. President, to be honest, I didn't think it was enough. Many of us didn't think it was enough. But we have not been able to come to terms between the two houses of Congress and with the President on how we can do more and get the votes to do it and get the President to sign the bill. So I'm not saying that we're going to agree with everything in this omnibus appropriations bill, but every one of these bills did go through the committees, and they have been vetted, and they did keep the agreement. We have lowered the spending across the board. We set the final 2012 funding at $1.043 trillion. This is $7 billion less than last year's level, and it is almost $100 billion less than the President's request. Now, it's not enough for many people in this body, but we all voted in the majority. 74 Senate members voted in favor of the Budget Control Act, and the appropriations bills all have met those caps. That's something that I don't hear said very often in this body, that we've met the caps. I was vice chairman, the ranking member of one of the appropriations committees that was very important, that funded NASA, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Justice. We met those caps, and it was hard. Each one of the subcommittees and appropriations on the Senate side met the caps, even though we had to cut and balance and set priorities and not fund some of the important areas that we would like to have funded. But that's what choosing and priorities are, and that's why we made the agreement and we stuck to it. So when all of these appropriations bills are complete, we will have cut discretionary spending for 2 years in a row, for the first time in modern history, frankly. Really cut. So now we are working toward cutting the deficits over a 10-year period as we agreed we would do. In the next few days, I hope that we're going to take 2012 off the books and immediately focus our attention on long-term deficit reduction and hopefully comprehensive tax reform. Because, Mr. President, the real issue is how are we going to get the debt down more. We're talking about a $15 trillion debt. If we cut the debt $1 trillion, it's a down payment, but I think we need to do more in a responsible way. But we can't do it all in discretionary spending. If we're going to do what the taxpayers elected us to do, we're going to deal with entitlements. We're going to deal with Social Security reform and Medicare reform. Everyone knows, common sense tells us, that Social Security has changed since the time it was passed, and today when people are living longer and retiring later. But we haven't accommodated to those changes. We haven't set the actuarial table that would sustain Social Security for the next 75 years. And we could do it by just very gradually, 3 months a year only, increasing the age of retirement. Put a cap on it at 68 or 69, and we could bring Social Security into balance. We would also have to make adjustments in the cost of living increases, but we would not have to raise taxes, and we would not have to deal with the core benefits in any reduction. So we can do this, and to make significant deficit reduction so that the $15 trillion starts really coming down, that is our debt, we have to deal with Social Security reform. I have introduced legislation with Senator Kyle as my co-sponsor that has done exactly that. Other senators have introduced legislation. Senator Paul introduced legislation that would also bring down gradually the Social Security deficits, which would also bring down the debt of our country. This is responsible. I am going to push in next year to try to get this Social Security reform. But in the next 2 days, we're going to deal with discretionary spending because that's all we have on the table to deal with. And we are going to keep the agreement that we made in the Budget Control Act, which 74 members of the United States Senate supported. The appropriators have kept their word. Every single bill has had a cap on spending. And where we have the capability to deal with discretionary spending, and that's all we have, we can't deal with entitlements until we have entitlement reform. But in discretionary spending, the appropriators have kept their word, and that's what we'll be voting on, to keep the word that 74 senators agreed was the right approach. We are going to vote on a bill that will be passed by the House today and hopefully passed by the Senate tonight or tomorrow, as our leader has said we will. I hope we can pass that bill. Now, Mr. President, we also have to deal with the long term. We're not going to be able to do it in the next 2 days. But surely, when we come back next year, we can take up tax reform. We can put our tax code in a better structure so that our corporations will bring their businesses that are now overseas back to America. Those are going to be jobs in America. That's how we want to create revenue in this country, not by taxing the people who would hire people, but by having an equitable tax code that will make corporations do their business here so that people will have jobs and they will increase the revenue and the economy of our country. That's the way we need to deal with the long term. We need to deal with entitlement reform and tax code reform. We don't have a revenue problem in this country. We don't have a problem with people paying too little in taxes. We have a spending problem that has given us a $15 trillion debt. So I hope that as all of the families in America are settling in for the holidays, that we would be doing the work in Washington that would assure a long-term future for these families, which means we're going to have to cut spending from the government, that we're not going to increase taxes on the working people of our country, and that we would have regulatory reform that would allow our small businesses to grow without the heavy hand of government putting a blanket on their ability to grow. Because when there's a blanket on the ability to grow, they're not going to hire more people. And that's the problem we have in this country right now. So we are making, in the next 2 days, I hope that my colleagues will support the agreement that we made in August to start the down payment on the spending in this country, lowering it from what the President sent over a budget that we've cut almost $100 billion. Even in the face of the crisis that we have in this country on spending, the President sent us a budget that was $100 billion more than we are going to pass in the House and Senate, because we made an agreement in August to cut spending. And, Mr. President, the House is also going to send disaster relief, which I will certainly support, and they're going to send a bill that would pay for it with a 1.83% across-the-board cut in discretionary-based spending, excluding the Department of Defense, military construction, and Veterans Affairs. I think that's a responsible approach. I think with the budget that we're putting forward, with the appropriations, a 1.83% across-the-board cut to fund disaster relief that we know is going to happen and be necessary in the next months, 9 months of next year, that we should pay for that. We should have disaster relief in our budgets in the future, and we should try to accommodate it right now. We're not going to withhold it for people who are in need, and we don't know if it's going to be wildfires or drought or hurricanes or tornadoes. And we're not going to deny that help, but it should be budgeted. Just like everything that we do should have some sense that we've prepared for it. Preparing for disaster should be part of our budget. There's not a business in this country that doesn't prepare for disasters, and the government should do it too. So, Mr. President, I hope that we will be on a trajectory to lower the spending, keeping our agreement of August, with the omnibus appropriations bill that is going to be passed by the House this afternoon and will come to the Senate, and I hope we will be able to act by tomorrow on that piece of legislation that keeps the agreements we made. It is a down payment. It's not what all of us wanted, but I think we ought to put disaster relief in, and I think we ought to pay for that with another 1.8% cut across the board. I think those things would be the responsible approach. And then we can start next year on the long term, and that would be regulatory reform, Social Security reform to make it solvent for 75 years at least, Medicare reform. Those are the things that will give us the long-term, hopefully solvent government that will be the model for the world, because is there any question that we need a model in the world right now for fiscal discipline and responsible governing? And I hope America can provide it. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Quorum call on the floor of the Senate. Senate is in general speeches until about 5 p.m. today as they await work in the House on some of those outstanding year-end issues. The payroll tax cut, 2012 federal spending, which runs out at midnight tonight. The Medicare doc fix all still need action in the Senate. Votes on some of this are expected within the next 24 to 36 hours, according to Majority Leader Harry Reid. The House is debating the conference report to the omnibus spending package right now. Votes in the House expected possibly around 3 o'clock this afternoon. And according to The Hill today, House lawmakers expect to leave town today and then return next week to deal with extending the payroll tax holiday. Before they leave, the House is expected to vote on a one-week continuing resolution to keep the government open after today, as well as on a $1 trillion nine-bill spending omnibus, and that is according to House Appropriations Committee Chair Hal Rogers. You can see the House live on our companion network, C-SPAN, and, of course, the Senate right here on C-SPAN, too. General speeches on the Senate floor until about 5 p.m. Eastern. We're hearing as lawmakers continue negotiations to avoid a federal government shutdown tonight at midnight. Fiscal year 2012 spending, extending unemployment benefits, the payroll tax cut, and a Medicare doc fix are all under consideration. We are just hearing from the Associated Press that Senate Minority Leader McConnell will not back a compromise payroll tax cut extension unless the bill includes language aimed at forcing construction of the Canada to Texas pipeline. The GOP demands added uncertainty to efforts by Senate Minority Leader McConnell and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid to quickly reach a deal on a bill renewing payroll tax cuts and jobless benefits for the long-term unemployed. A House-passed version of that payroll tax bill would give President Obama 60 days to decide whether to build the proposed 1,700-mile Keystone XL pipeline. The president, with the support of congressional Democrats, has announced that he will delay that decision until after next year's elections, citing a need to study the impact that the pipeline would have on a sensitive land area in Nebraska. The president has threatened to reject a payroll tax bill if it includes language easing work on the pipeline. Well, we do expect during today's White House briefing to hear more about how the negotiations are going. That briefing is set for 2:30 Eastern, live coverage on C-SPAN 3.